there's tragedy, there's comedy, there's drama, all rolled into these 5 minutes of their date. So like I think it's
with all of those elements too, if you think about it, right? Like. Hi, this is Juniper.
Hello, this is Elle.
Welcome to our special Halloween edition of our pod. I guess it's Halloween special because we actually went out of our way, or I made Elle go out of her way to watch a movie that's more appropriate for the upcoming Halloween holiday. So, tried to strong arm Elle into watching a very famous old movie based on the famous book called The Haunting, but she doesn't like scary movies. So then I got her to settle on what I would consider a ghost story for people who don't like ghost stories. Would you agree, Elle?
Yes, because I avoid horror when I can, and especially black and white movies. When you tell me it's like a ghost story, that seems even scarier. So this was a good compromise, I think.
Yes, I'm glad you checked it out. I hope you're glad too. But before we get into all that, the movie we ended up watching for Halloween is called The Uninvited. I've seen it many times. This was Elle's first time. It's one of my favorite classic movies. And it stars Milland, Ruth Hussey, and Gail Russell. And it basically is the story of two siblings, Rick and Pamela Fitzgerald, who, while on vacation on the Cornish coast in England, right, happened upon a old house that they fall in love with. And the house's owner, old Commander Beach, lets them buy it for real cheap. It's so cheap, by the way. We have to talk about the price. I think they offered £1,200, and I looked it up. I'm like, that's under £100,000 even in today's money. I'm like, I want that house for that cheap, even ghost or not, right? But anyways, they soon find it's haunted. And Stella Meredith, the daughter of the woman Mary Meredith, who died falling off the cliff right in front of the house. So the house is on a cliff, or near a coastal cliff. Stella is forbidden from visiting the house by her grandfather, who is the commander. However, she ends up befriending the Fitzgeralds and has like a budding romance with Rick. And she starts visiting the house. And that's when you find out that there are ghostly disturbances that are going to pick up and really aimed at putting her in danger, right? Like it wants to make her go and run off the cliff. So they must figure out what's going on with the ghost, who it is, in order to solve the mystery of the hauntings, and more importantly, save Stella from danger. So that's a quick synopsis for those of you who are like, okay, now I don't watch the movie. Now I know what it's about.
You should still watch it. I liked it. So it's funny because I haven't watched an old film in a very long time. I used to watch them a lot with you, I think, and then I just haven't, because there's always so many new things to watch, and I forgot about how calm the pacing is of these early films. And so it's a suspense, but it's not like a suspense where like they throw the scary parts right at you. It's actually a very normal beginning, which I guess is typical in some horror dramas too. But like the way they come upon the house, the way they suddenly I love it. It's like they're not rich people, but they bought this beautiful home, and then they were able to quickly furnish it
enough, though, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, like, they're well off
in the world. He's a music critic or a writer or something. I don't know what she does, but they're basically like, oh, let's put our money together. Like she's like, I love this house. Let's put our money together. Of course, it's all of their money, so they have nowhere else to go the minute
Yes. And it's funny because when I first started watching, I was like, oh, this is cool. It's a whole real estate thing. Like, they spend
the real estate. You're like, I like real estate. Let me watch this with the real estate. But it is a very beautiful house.
It's a beautiful house. Has these very dramatic ocean, like waves crashing on the rocks, like views out throughout these big windows. Like even the artist studio, when they go in, they're like, oh, this is a terrible room. I'm like, what? I mean, because we can't see it in color, so maybe it looked really dingy or whatever. But like, you have this giant wall of windows facing the ocean. So they spent a fair amount on just talking about the house. and then and then and I like the scene where he was gonna like he pretended he was gonna like go down the banister, and then he's like, "Oh
Yes.
no, I'm too old. I'm too old for this," basically, right?
Well,
Um,
establishes his character, right? Which is he's a very he's not a very serious man. Like he's kind of the jokester, lighthearted guy. And Ray Milland is perfect for that type of role. Like you and I love Ray Milland, right? We watched quite a
mhm,
few rom-coms with him from back in the day, like Three Smart Girls and stuff like that. Or Major and the Minor, the Major and the
mhm,
Minor.
mhm.
But yeah, I think I like the fact that he's in this because I think it really is a good counterpoint or counterbalance to what otherwise
Yes,
actually could have been a very chilling. It's not spooky, it's a chilling story. If you actually calm down and thought about it and put yourself in their place, right?
yes,
It's a
yes.
very chilling story. Like, anyways,
I have
but
to say
finish your
though,
thought.
no, I mean it's funny because like when the like how like the sister basically experienced it first because he left for like 3 weeks or whatever shortly
Mm-hmm.
after moving in. So he came home and she kind of wanted to tell him that about these weird sounds and that she hears
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the night, but she didn't want to scare him. So she's like, "Oh, just go to bed." And then in the middle of the night, they both get woken up by this like I don't know, it's howling or just this like not screaming. It's more like a woman's howl in the night, and they say
She's
how
she's
always
she's
happens.
sobbing. A
Yeah, yeah,
sobbing
yeah,
voice.
yes. So it happens like I guess right before dawn, and then she'll go away, or the sound will go away. And like I feel like they both took it really well. like,
Well,
like
she took it really well. Like, I
she
like
took
her
it because I
character.
was like, yeah, she's still living in that house by herself for three
Well, they
weeks,
got
and
nowhere else to go, and she feels a little bit guilty, right? Because she's the one who's like, "Let's buy this house. Let's like put everything in, and this is it." They got nowhere else to go. But I like how she's so level-headed. This is Pamela, the sister, right? She's like,
yes,
"Oh,
yes,
I did look." He's like, "Oh, maybe it's like a weird sound coming from something that's broken and stuff." She's like, "No, I checked." I was like,
yeah,
"Really?
yeah.
If
She
I heard that
checked.
at the middle of the night by myself, I'm not gonna go with a candle." And that's the other thing about the house. There's not really a lot of electricity,
No,
like
there's not
electric light.
electricity.
There's
Yes,
one room, right, that has like
yeah.
electric light, and they go around at night with candles, so it adds to that spooky, kind
Mm-hmm.
of ghostly effect. Which I'm like, these are brave people. But then, you hear about ghosts, like real life ghost stories where people go, "Oh, my house is haunted." They don't move either. So I'm like, what is it about not moving and also going to confront the so-called haunting element, right? Like I'd be like, I'm out of here, man.
Yeah, yeah. I think as long as the ghost doesn't disturb you, like hurt you, I think people are will tolerate it. Like I don't know if it's a
That's
religious
true.
thing, right? It's not I don't know if it's religious or superstitious where you're like, well, if they're not really doing anything harmful and they have you feel sympathy, like there must be a reason they're still hanging around if you believe in that kind of thing. Then you're
Mm-hmm.
like you're more tolerant versus like if this ghost was like straight up hurting you or doing really creepy things. But yeah, she took it really well, and then he took it really well too. I'm like, wow, they're just venturing around this house, like this purportedly large home, looking for the source of the sound. And then they introduced the love interest from Ray Milan pretty early. The woman, Stella,
Stella,
the young woman.
the doe-eyed
So
young girl who is so
yeah,
pretty and so
so beautiful, so
nervous.
very nervous.
And
Um,
and yep, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it was a very stark contrast, I think, to the very level-headed siblings. Like
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting because she's also not afraid because she believes the ghost might be her mother, her dead mother.
Right.
So it's like a bunch of people who are really all reacting very similarly to like this ghost and wanting to know why and what it is and um yeah, so it was interesting actually. Like that none of them were really afraid. It wasn't that kind of
But
movie where yeah.
But that's a classic ghost story setup, right? Because in true classic old school type of ghost stories, what happens is someone tells you there's a ghost, like such and such is haunted. You usually go in not believing it, like, poppycock, right?
Mhm.
Or eventually or you find out, oh, it actually is haunted, but then there's like kind of like like brazenness to their spirit of like, that's okay, it's just a ghost, I'm not afraid, like I can overcome this, it's no big deal. They brush it off, but that's also then becomes a kind of the foundation for the story, right? Because otherwise there is no story. Like, I moved, okay, the end.
Right.
No more ghost.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so actually one of the early scenes that I really liked was this boat scene where the girl she's heavily sheltered by her grandfather and she doesn't go anywhere, and Rick, he's like, "Oh, you're young, you should have fun." So the age gap between them is about like 17, 18 years in real life, I think.
Yeah.
So she's 20 in the movie, and but in real life we looked it up and he was 37 when he
So
filmed
I'm
it.
assuming they have at least like a decade in between them in the story. I haven't read the
Yes.
original novel, but he's an older man. Not that
Yes,
old, but
yes.
compared to her very young girl, yes, there's an age gap.
Yes. Actually, in the movie, they commented on that. Like his sister was like, "Oh yeah, she's kind of she's a kid." Like he's like, "Yeah, but she's so
He's
not."
kind of like a kid too, though. In some
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. I mean, they don't make it in a bad way, but they mention that it's not like they completely ignored the fact that there's an age gap. So like, so he's like, "Oh, I'll take you sailing," and they're on this. I told you it's like a whole story in 5 minutes unfolding. Where in the beginning he's like, "Yeah, do you get seasick?" And then the next scene he's like laying there looking really seasick, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And checking in on him.
I just remembered that. I was like, yes, it was kind of like, how quickly you have to eat your own words kind of deal.
Yeah, like literally 1 second, he's like, "Do you get seasick?" And then next shot, in the same boat, he's laying there like, "Oh, when is this over?" And then he gets better, and then he gets knocked in the head by like part of the sail. The sail like swung and hit him in the head. So like this drama, this tragedy, this comedy, there's drama all rolled into these 5 minutes of their date. So like I think it's
with all of those elements too, if you think about it, right? Like before when we were talking offline about this, I said, if you strip away Ray Milland's character and his kind of shenanigans, right? How he interacts with other people and his dialogue, the way he comes across. It's two very different movies. His part without the ghost is very light comedy, the type of like 1930s 40s rom-coms, right, that we're used to, where it's on like witty, bantery, right, and with good-looking people in dinner jackets, right?
Yes,
cosmopolitan. Yes. But then if you strip that away, the underlying ghost story, so it's not just one ghost they find out, it's two ghosts.
Yes,
it is very chilling. And the sound
like, why are they both there? Yeah.
Yes. Anyways, that I digress. And then the cinematography, I think you mentioned, like, it looks so beautiful the way it starts, right? The movie, everything, like the mood, it's the Cornish coast, which I've always wanted to go to Cornwall because there's other things that made me see Cornwall and it's very lush. And I would say the feel of the movie is very lush. Like, there's that sweeping music in the background and the ocean and the wind and the scenery. It amazes me to think about the fact that they shot this on a soundstage, in California.
Yeah.
Right? You don't question that when you're watching this, though. I mean, it's all fake. You know that, right? It's like fake background, but it feels like, oh, they're in England. They're in a village. It's by the seaside. You don't question that. So they did a very good job. Anyways, so all I'm trying to say is there's three very different contrasting elements if you think about it. You took the movie apart. But they somehow work when you put them together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they even managed by the end. Obviously, we have spoilers, but by the end, there's like two romances, right? Like the brother and sister are each paired off with someone by the very end.
Which,
like,
I mean, I don't know why they had to pair the sister off with the doctor. I mean, it's a natural pairing the way they've kind of led up to it, but there was no real hint of that happening, right?
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. It was like, yeah, like this doctor. I mean, yeah, he kind of got swept into this drama of theirs because he was originally the captain's doctor, and then but because the granddaughter Stella also has like these moments where she falls ill, she's in shock, or she fainted, so they always call this doctor, and he's like the only doctor in town, I guess. And oh yeah, and going back to what you said with the like how it's all candlelight, I think at the very end they even mentioned like the house doesn't even have a phone, so like they couldn't even call for help.
Yeah.
So they are very isolated too, and yet they keep willingly go back. So yeah. Even the animals didn't want to be there. Remember, like the dog had
The
to live
cat.
with someone else. Yeah, the cat and
And
the
the cat
dog, I
wouldn't go
think.
up the stairs.
Yeah,
Right?
so
So
all the
you should
animals were
listen to your
like,
animals.
so like everything's telling them to stay away, and they're like, no, we just live here. We'll just sleep, sleep in this haunted
Yeah, I
house.
was like, you brave people, but I do like the. Well, let's talk about the story itself, right? We kind of talked about characters and mood and kind of initial reactions, right? Let's talk about the story. Like, as a first time watcher, right? Because I've watched this many times now. What was kind of the most, I guess, standout or aspect, or maybe even gripping, because this is a ghost story at the heart of it for you?
I mean, okay, so I would say it was interesting how it started off like it could have been just scary, but then it made it into like almost this not detective show, but kind of like, right? Like they're all trying to figure out what happened. They're asking like people who worked back then, either on the property, like do they know what happened? So I think the way the story's set up, because it kind of pivoted to more of investigation versus just trying to like remove the ghost, was kind of an interesting move, because they did a seance. That was one scene where that was kind of creepy for me.
That was a memorable scene for me. That
Yeah.
and when the ghost appears for the first time. Well, the few times that one of the ghosts appears, I should say.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and actually
Definitely.
and actually picked up the thing they were moving around and threw it away, I think, or something like that. So I would say they did explore that. It was interesting how even the doctor was like, yeah, I've seen some seances before. I thought they were fake, but but he's a believer too, right? But then once they start doing that investigation, it was interesting how they try to like link and make it logical. Like it's not just like haunted for no reason, or and actually the twist at the end I liked. So the twist was the whole time that she thought she was the daughter of Mary Meredith, the captain's daughter. It turned out she was like the daughter of Carmel, the other ghost, who is supposedly the muse of her father. Her father was an
the
artist.
artist model, because her father was a painter, right?
Yeah. So so supposedly when she was born, before she was born, they brought Carmel in, and I guess once the baby was born, the Mary Meredith, the rich woman, adopted her as her own. And so basically, the reason Stella was in trouble was that once she grew up, I think the ghost of Mary was not happy and just wanted to bring her down.
Well, Mary Meredith died because of Stella in some ways, right? Because so basically Carmel wanted her baby back. She was told to go by Mary Meredith from the house, and then I think the husband didn't do it at least not in the movie, right? So I think Mary Meredith tried to kill Stella, the baby, out of jealousy or anger. And there must have been a fight at the cliffs, and that's how she fell. Right, just desserts, basically. She fell to her death.
Yes.
No one ever said the truth. And there's actually hints of this is very gothic, this part, right? Like, this is where I think people compare this to Rebecca. You know Rebecca, right? Where it's like the perfect woman in her memory. And it turns out she's not perfect. That's Mary Meredith, right?
Yeah.
And she's quite evil.
Yes.
I love how that became kind of the arsenal against, like, to neutralize her at the end. It was basically like, ha 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 ha, we found out you're not perfect, and in fact you're a bitch, right? And then he laughed at her, and the ghost went away. I'm like, wow, if it only worked on all ghosts that way.
Right? All you have to just laugh in their faces. They're so mad they go away.
Right, but it also justifies the approach they took throughout the story, right? The investigative aspect. Like, basically, they're like, well, there's something to it in the history that will explain why the hauntings are happening. Because if you think about it, most ghosts, we believe, even we outside of the movie believe, are kind of spirits who won't let go because there's something that is holding them back, right? So in the case of Carmel's ghost, it's because she couldn't let go of the fact her own daughter doesn't know who she is, right?
Yes. And she was also protecting her, I think. Carmel's ghost. Yeah. Because she said that when she smelled the scent of this flower, I think called
mimosa.
she said that like she would feel warmth and love, like a mother's love.
Mhm.
Like she said, it was a very
Mhm.
calming feeling. But she thought it was coming from Mary, not from She
Mhm.
didn't know it was coming from Carmel.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was interesting, and she embraced the news so easily too. She's like, oh, now I feel complete, and I feel like
Well,
I
because I
feel.
think Mary Meredith was this daunting, chilling, like epitome of cool, right?
Mhm. She also had a best friend who was like colluding
Oh,
with her
Miss
after
Holloway,
death.
she's
Yeah.
actually the creepiest character. This in addition to the ghost, she's creepier than the ghosts actually.
Well, because she can actually harm you. Like she can like put you away in a
She
mental
was a crazy
asylum.
woman in charge of a mental asylum, basically.
Yes, and she was trying to. It was weird. Like I don't think she set out to hurt Stella, but she also wasn't really protecting her because she
No,
sent her
she
back.
was trying to send her to her death.
Yeah, like she was helping Mary like complete what she couldn't complete when
Yeah,
she was
because when
alive.
she heard, she's like, "Oh, Stella wants to like run over the cliff when she's at the house." Oh, really? Well, let me send her back because you guys are gonna be here. Like, I was like, "Wow, this is very devious woman, right?" Like,
Yeah, but they showed it very quickly that she was already gone. Like she lost her mind, right at the
right?
end. Like she
Do
basically
you
lost her mind.
do you feel like they were hinting at kind of there were hints of lesbianism there, like that she was had a oh, so we have to talk
Yes,
in the
yes.
context of the times, right? Which is, maybe very homophobic, not maybe, probably very homophobic. And it was always like, if you're a lesbian, it's a no-no. And I feel like they had that in Rebecca with Mrs. Danvers, who had an unhealthy obsession with Rebecca,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Um, this is like Mrs. Danvers light. Miss Holloway is Mrs. Danvers light, right? Which is like, she's obsessed with her former friend in charge, Mary Meredith. And there's like a whole like, I look up to you, I obsess over you, I adore you. And now my life is complete because now I've gotten revenge for you, or so she thinks. And it's
Yes.
almost like a judgment on lesbianism, I feel like.
I mean, I think she definitely had love for her. I I feel like if it was lesbianism, it was one-sided. I don't think
Oh yeah,
Mary
Mary's too
like
cool and cold to
yeah,
love anyone
Mary's
but
like
herself.
because she's described as perfect and beautiful. Like right, her father
Yeah.
remembers her that way, and he even said he tried to raise Stella to be exactly like Mary. Um, so like she's like definitely on a pedestal. So I think Miss Holloway she holds on to that memory as well, and she completely has gilded her in this I don't know reputation or this sort of golden armor of like I would do anything for her, which includes helping her kill the child that was it implied though that Carmel's pregnancy was with with Mary's husband, right? It wasn't like some other guy's
Yeah, yeah,
child. Yeah.
she is the daughter of Meredith, Mr. Meredith, whatever. They never say her father, whoever it is.
Yes, yes. Okay.
But that's
So
that's
yeah,
what
so it's
also
like
angers Mary more.
it's a love child, right? So that she wanted to raise, but then she probably would have raised her, and who knows what kind of mother she would have been, but then she died. So then she's like coming back from the dead to try to kill her too. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I said, the pacing, I forgot how slow, but it's not slow in a bad way.
It's
It's
not
just
slow.
like
It's a very
it's not
like it takes its time revealing the
um
story.
I want not slow. I want to say like I'm so like modern movies. They do so many takes and cuts, like so much cutting. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Mm,
And in this one, it's more like they take their time doing one shot and then they move and then they
yes.
move. Yeah, right.
Yes.
And it doesn't. It helps with the pacing. It's not like it's just stylistically, it's early movie
It's more about story
style.
and interpersonal dialogue and dynamics than like flash and manipulation. Although there is
Yes.
manipulation with the, like I said, the cinematography, the mood setting from the lushness of the music and the
Mm-hmm.
black and white house, right? If this was a color movie, it'd be half as scary. Not scary. Scary is not the word. Chilling. There is a gothic chill plus lush romanticism. Like I said, okay, you watch this movie because you don't like scary movies, but this is still a Halloween appropriate theme, right? So for
Yes,
people who
yes.
don't like to be scared, but still kind of like to like watch something that's intriguing and chilling in its own way, but yes, at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, fun and enjoyable. This is, I think, one of the more perfect movies for that type of mood. And it is a mood in itself to watch this
Yeah.
movie. It's only like an hour and 39 minutes. So the fact that they can tell this story in so short of a time, all the old movies were never like over 2 hours. They were usually, unless it's Gone with the Wind, like an epic, right? They
Yeah.
could do a lot with like 90 minutes of runtime.
Yeah. And they had like a few different characters. It's not like just talking about 4 or 5 people, right? Like they introduced
Yeah.
like when he went to the post office, or I think it was the post office, or maybe it was a
Yes. Or the
convenience
general
store.
store or
Yeah,
something like
general
that.
store. Yeah. So like, like you get a sense of, oh, there's a village in the area, and then there's a train. She takes a train. Like there's you don't see it all, but you hear about it, and you're like, oh yeah, it's a place. It's a real place, and it's not like all centered on this gloomy little house on the cliff. So yeah, it's done. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I would watch it again. I think like the people are just very beautiful to look at too, obviously in that old Hollywood way. And
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, the only thing that jarred me was their accents, because I was like, wait, is this England? I was like, how come like I think
Well,
only the
yes.
cap because only the captain I think spoke with an English accent, like the daughter didn't, and then
Well,
the
Stella
Fitzgeralds.
definitely doesn't, right?
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
American. Gail Russell,
yeah.
the actress, is American. But Ray Milland's British, so he had his kind of more continental slash American. Like he speaks like
Yeah,
Ray Milland.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
Cary Grant, right? Cary Grant doesn't have an American accent per se, nor does he have a British accent.
Right, right. So I was like, wait, what country are they in? Because I was like, pounds. It's always supposed to be England, but
Yes,
then
they're in
none of
Cornwall,
them
not
really.
in California.
Yeah, none of them really spoke with a British accent. So that's the only thing.
Actually, no, I think Ray Milland is Welsh. I have to look that up. But well, I mean, that's still UK, right? But
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
so speaking of Gail Russell, right? So we did note this that it's funny because as much as we love this movie, she is actually so what worked really well for this film was that she's also this nervous girl, right? In the
yeah.
film, which
Hmm.
so fragile yet brave at the same time. And that's kind of the thing she projects so well. But I believe in real life she was a fragile being because she died at age 36 of alcoholism, basically.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that it was because she's so nervous about acting. She was basically plucked out to be in the studio system back in the day because of her looks. She never had self-esteem about and confidence basically in her acting abilities. So I actually read somewhere that like she cried every 6 or 7 lines. She'll break down
Yeah.
crying doing this movie, and this is one of her earlier movies. And Ray
Yeah.
Milland would like do lines with her all the time, just to kind of, I guess, get her to be used to it.
Hmm.
But I think someone wrote or said somewhere that someone suggested she drink alcohol to help with the nerves, and so that's
Mm.
basically what started her on the path to alcoholism.
Mm. That's sad.
So
Yeah.
so that's a bigger tragedy outside of this movie, right? That's
Yeah.
actually triggered by the making of such a good movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, I was like, I've never seen her before. She's really pretty, and I thought so. I did look her up to see, where her career went, and then I was like, oh, I didn't realize she died so young. So yeah, that's sad. But yeah, she definitely had that charm that made the movie very like believable too, right? Because she actually is a very important character. She like in terms of unfolding all of this, like her character is actually really key in the plot. And even if there was no romance between her and Ray Milland, she still mattered a lot. So like I still think that they did a good job like casting her, even though she was very young. She was like 19 when she filmed. Um but yeah, so I would say, yeah, I don't what rating would you give? What rating have you given since you watched it so many times already?
It's hard, right? I want to give it a 9 out of 10, but I think for someone who doesn't love this movie as much as I do. Like I'm fond of it, right? Obviously, I have it on DVD. Remember, I said, "Oh, let me go brush off my Criterion, collection version of this." It's probably more for most people who get into it. Probably more like 8.5. So
Yeah.
let me ask
Yeah.
you: is that your rating? What's your rating after
Yeah,
watching it
I was
once?
gonna give it like an 8.7. Yeah.
Oh, more generous than 8.5. Thank you, thank you. I say thank you for the movie on
Because you
behalf of the movie.
recommended. No, because I think, like you said, Ray Milland definitely is the key draw. Like he's the one I remember the most. I mean, his
Mm-hmm.
sister's good, but her, the story's not about her. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nice to also see a healthy sibling relationship too. They actually have very, very good sibling relationship, and I don't know if that was typically shown, for adults who are they're both single, like so they don't have other things happening, and but it was nice to watch this family unit, and
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, it's a enjoyable spooky film. I can
Yeah, but
say
it's
it
not
like
gonna
that.
like scare you to shits, right? Like you walk away going, "Well, that was a good way to spend 90 something minutes."
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and it wraps up really cleanly. Oh, you wanted to talk about the music. There's a
oh yes,
song.
well, there is a song, and it's a very famous song if you know your jazz standards. So I actually heard it first time when I originally watched this movie, and at the time I thought, "Wow, this is a very nice, piece of music," and it's called Stella by Starlight, and they play it when he first invites her over. Well, they invite Stella over to dinner, right? And they're in the artist
Hmm.
studio where he's put his piano, and he's basically like composing on the fly. And she's like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, it's called Stella by Starlight," right?
Hmm.
It's a beautiful piece of music, and apparently, years after I heard it while listening to, I don't know, Winter Jazz Mix or something, right? And I looked and I was like, wow, this sounds really familiar. And then I looked and I was like, wow, it's called Stella by Starlight. And after doing some research, I realized this is actually a jazz standard now. And it went into the canon because this movie came out in 1944. It doesn't have lyrics in the movie. 2 years later, I think, it became a song. Someone put like an arrangement together, I think,
Hmm.
um, and put lyrics to it. And now it's a very famous jazz standard.
Yeah. No, it
So
was a pretty song. It was a pretty song in the movie too. And I like how she's like, "How did you come up with this?" And he's like, "I don't know, it just came to me." He's like, "I'm not an artist." Oh, even though he delivered the lines, "I'm not an artist," because her father's an artist, right? And like
yes.
there's a portrait of her mother that she said her father painted of her in that studio. He's like, "Oh, I'm not an artist, but like I paint with these white keys, white and ivory, the ivory and black keys." And I was like, "Oh, that's a very romantic sentiment too, right?" And
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah, he doesn't treat her like a kid, even with the age gap. So it's interesting. It would have been interesting to see that type of as a separate type of story, right? That romantic dynamic between these two characters. If it wasn't
yeah.
a ghost story.
Yes. Well, it's weird because I feel like even though it's obvious he likes her. I don't feel like it was obvious that she liked him. I feel like she was a little too young and like
Yes.
ingenuish to even know
Yes.
how to respond. Like I think she's just thought of him as a very nice person that she can hang out
Mhm.
with.
And
So
lives in
then
the house that she wants to get into that she's been forbidden from.
yeah, yeah. Like I feel like
He
yeah,
has what
like if
she wants.
you
The house.
yeah, yeah. I feel like if you give it a few years, if they're still talking, it would develop into a real romantic relationship. I feel like here he's more just like a protective friend. Obviously, I mean, obviously he cares deeply about her, but it's yeah. I
Well,
would say it's not like a romance in that sense,
I
right?
think
The
it's
focus
implied
is
that you're
not.
getting married, though, right? Because at the end, the last line he says it was like a near escape from she could have been my mother-in-law,
Oh
meaning
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
Mary Meredith ghost. I was like, that was kind of funny.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he would just take care of her.
Yeah.
She would go from one sheltered situation to another sheltered situation.
You think that? I think though it's implied that she's broken out of her shell that was imposed on her by the commander, her grandfather, who is protected. I mean, he knew, right? He knew the truth, and he knew that his daughter's ghost was out to get her. In fact, she
Yeah.
got him, which I was like, oh, so she killed her father. Anyways,
Yeah,
right? So I do think,
I couldn't tell what he died of. I read someone said he died of a heart attack. So I was like, oh, is that what he
Yes,
died of?
I
Because
think
he
so.
just, yeah, he just kind of, and then you're like, wait, he's dead? Like, what happened? You know? So,
So I
yeah,
do think, if we took this a few years later, they're married and she is broken up. She's now her own woman. But we're not here for that movie, and we don't need that movie. We don't need it to make this story complete. It's not watch.
no.
So I'll say it again to wrap up. Right, watch this movie because it's a very lush, romantic ghost story. That has a lot of wit to it, fun, like almost like comedic elements, right? And
Mhm.
do not expect this to be like, oh my gosh, so scary, so chilling, but it will suck you in if you let it, because you do want to find out what's going on. And there are certain highlights like the seance scene when the apparitions start, and then even the first time you hear the ghost sobbing,
Yeah.
it's actually very chilling,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
You can
Uh-huh.
put yourself in those shoes. You're like, oh my God, what if I got woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning and there's
I
someone
would be
going,
gone.
you're like, and it's such a sad, mm, kind of heart-wrenching sob that
Yeah.
echoes through the house, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're by the cliff of a ocean, ocean seaside cliff, not ocean. So I think watch it for that. It's a very short investment of time. And if you do have like this movie or have watched it or decide to check it out after this, do let us know. I will not that many people I know watch old movies anymore. I used to watch a lot of old movies, right? And I think Elle, you said you did too because of me
Mm-hmm.
and on your own. So it'd be good to hear what other people's thoughts are with a
Yeah.
modern perspective.
My last thought is, the last scene when he's laughing at the ghost and then he threw the candelabra at her? And I was like,
Fire
I thought
hazard.
like, no, I thought he was gonna set the house on fire
Yeah.
and then they would, then the house is gone. But like, no, nothing.
No,
It's
that's
just
not
like,
Rebecca. Rebecca is where the house burns down.
I know, that's what I was expecting. I was like, oh my god, he threw it on a hardwood floor. Nothing happened. So the
Oh, and
candelabra
of
probably just
course,
went out.
yeah, I know. I was like, that's a brazen move. I wouldn't throw a lit bunch of candles at something that's gonna go right through. Did not think that through, but it worked anyways. And and of course, last thing from my end is check out Stella by Starlight on Spotify or wherever your music listening platform of choice is, because it's a very nice tune, even if you don't watch the movie.
Yep. Agreed.
All
Yeah,
right?
it's a really pretty song.
Yeah. All right. That's it for our Halloween special edition, the non-spooky version of Halloween, I would like to call this. And I'm sure we'll come back to more classic Hollywood movies sometime in the future. But until then, we'll catch you on the next pod.
Bye.
Bye.